Okay, greetings everyone. Let me open this and make sure. Okay, so fair use disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Per the copyright. Thank you.
Before I begin this chapter's exploration into the rather dark...
I gotta pause, y'all. I'll be right back. My son forgot something. Okay, my fault, y'all. I'm back. My bad. It was important. I didn't want to end the live to go say what I had to say. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm back.
Of human sacrifice, crowd psychology, mind control, and human experimentation. I would like to open up with a quote that I have kept close to me for many years now, from the author Carlos Castaneda. And I want to bring this to you purely for speculative purposes. It is passages like this that can really make you think. Now, whether it is literally true or not, I leave that up to you. But even if it is a mythological allegory that holds a more esoteric meaning, I feel it is still relevant to some of the concepts that we will be looking at in this and future chapters. This passage comes from Castaneda's book, The Active Side of Infinity, and it is a dialogue between Carlos and his teacher, Don Juan. And Don Juan is saying,
I read that book at 8th grade.
That came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our lord and master. It has rendered us docile and helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. I have been beating around this bush all this time, insinuating to you that something is holding us prisoner. Indeed, we are held prisoner. This was an energetic fact for the sorcerers of ancient Mexico. These predators took us over because we are food for them, and they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Just as we rear chickens in chicken coops, predators rear us in human coops. Therefore, their food is always available to them. No, 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 Carlos replies. This is absurd, Don Juan. What you're saying is something monstrous. It simply can't be true. For sorcerers, or for an average man, or for anyone. Why not? Don Juan asked calmly. Why not? Because it infuriates you? Think for a moment, and tell me how you would explain the contradictions between the intelligence of man, the engineer, and the stupidity of his belief systems, or the stupidity of his contradictory behavior. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of belief, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, routinary, and egomaniacal. But how can they do this, Don Juan? Carlos asked. He was somehow angered by what Don Juan was saying. Do they whisper all that in our ears while we are asleep? No, they don't do it that way. That's idiotic, Don Juan said. They are infinitely more efficient and organized than that. In order to keep us obedient and meek and weak, the predators engage themselves in a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist. A horrendous maneuver from the point of view of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. Do you hear me? The predators gave us their mind, which then becomes our mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, and filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. I know that even though you have never suffered hunger, you have food anxiety, which is none other than the anxiety of the predator who fears that any moment now its maneuver is going to be uncovered and food is going to be denied. Through the mind, which after all is their mind, the predators inject into the lives of human beings whatever is convenient for them. And they ensure in this manner a degree of security to act as a buffer against their fear. The sorcerers of ancient Mexico were quite ill at ease with the idea of when the predator made its appearance on Earth. They reasoned that man must have been a complete being at one point, with stupendous insights, feats of awareness that are mythological legends nowadays. And then, everything seems to disappear. And we have now a sedated man. What I'm saying is that what we have against us is not a simple predator. It is very smart and organized. It follows a methodical system to render us useless. So I ask you, is there anything to this? I'll let that sit with you as we continue. I will be covering more on this concept as we go.
Because we're in an age of awakening, because the child of humanity is ready to wake, he's straining at his chains, they're ready there with the injection for yet a larger dose of mind control to keep you down. So you're straining at your chains and they're ready to administer yet more of their poison. The patient, as he struggles to release himself, the more you struggle to release yourself, the more you're in danger, you see, of a greater barrage of toxicity. Because we're not going to understand the world we're living in unless we do understand the past. In fact, we better realize that even things that we have taken as being mythologies, things that we consider to be myths, they're about to happen. Things that we take for mythologies, St. George and his dragon, right? The fall of Lucifer, things we think are of the past, They're far from of the past. They might even be things of the future. I know that sounds like a paradox, but think about it. Now, the title of tonight's talk is The Origins of Evil. And if that sounds heavy, it is. During the talk, you're going to discover, when you walk out that door, you will be in no doubt about it. If your ears are open, you're paying attention. By the time you walk out that door, you will know today why evil is in the world. I have been questioning that question since as far back as I can remember. It's what got me into all of this. The question of evil should be on the minds of every single human being in the world. It's not on the minds of everybody in the world, but it damn well should be. And if we don't resolve that and find out why we are so inhuman, where this injustice, cruelty, sadism comes from, we are actually bequeathing that question to our children. And everything else rests upon the foundation of that. Our empowerment lies on that question. Because within the understanding of that is the secret to bring this Goliath down.
Now that we have that on the table, we need to define and understand the nature of human evil. I know it is not a popular subject to explore, but it is essential if we are to better understand both our past and also our present situation. It has become rather popular and trendy to espouse the idea that evil doesn't really exist, that morality is simply relative and ever-changing, and that our ideas about good and evil are simply outdated. Our criminal justice system, for example, is more and more in favor of the criminals these days, rather than the actual victims of crime. Our entertainment and media seems to glorify and even emphasize a blind support for those characters that would previously have been deemed the antagonists of the story rather than the protagonists. The good guys have become the bad guys, and it appears that much of our understanding of the nature of evil has been completely discarded. Even the concept of free will is under attack in modern academia and in pop culture. Now, I have had many conversations with people about the nature of good and evil over the years, and many that I speak to seem to feel very uncomfortable admitting that evil does indeed exist, or that acts of evil happen on a much grander scale than many can possibly imagine.
I was born into what I refer to as a sex trafficking and international organized crime ring.
Now, I can understand that this is a difficult subject to explore or even think about. Who really wants to think about evil? Now, I personally believe that there is a few reasons for this, and one of those reasons might be due to our own innate fear of our propensity to commit acts of evil towards ourselves, which of course we dread to ever admit or come to terms with.
Because we need more psychology. We need more understanding of human nature, because the only real danger that exists is man himself. He is the great danger, and we are pitifully unaware of it. We know nothing of man, far too little. His psyche should.
Many of us are not attracted in any way to the acts of evil, especially the kind of evil that we're going to be exploring and exposing in this chapter. And so we then project our own virtue onto everyone else, believing that everyone has the same good intentions as we might have. However, this is a rather naive sentiment. Although understandable, it falls apart the moment we start to come face to face with evil itself. In other words, talk is cheap. Direct experience is another matter entirely. So let's then define the word evil, so that you know what I mean when I say it. If we start by simply looking at the word itself, you will notice that the word evil is simply the word live spelled backwards. For me, this tells us everything we need to know to start our exploration. This so-called coincidence hints at the nature of evil, that it is the inversion of the natural order of things. It is the anti-life force. It is the opposer. It is that which stands in direct opposition to life itself. And not just life in the survival sense of the word, but also against the act of living. Evil, in a general sense, can really be defined by what it is not. It is the opposite or absence of good. But let's get even more specific. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines evil as 1. Morally bad, 2. Causing harm or injury to someone, 3. Marked by bad luck or bad and wrongdoing. It's also defined as a cosmic evil force, something that brings sorrow, distress, or calamity. We could also look at evil as defined in a legal dictionary in which they use the word malice. Malice, or evil, is the intentional commission of a wrongful act, absent justification, with the intent to cause harm to individual, mental state.
I'm sorry, y'all. Hold on 1 second. Again, with my shenanigans. My apologies for the interlude. I shall return directly. Sorry. Again. I'm back. Not that y'all missed me or anything. Okay, sorry.
Duty and a tendency towards malfeasance. And in its legal application, the term malice is comprehensive and applies to any legal act that is committed intentionally without just cause or excuse. It does not necessarily imply personal hatred or ill feelings, but rather it focuses on the mental state that is in reckless disregard of the law in general and of the legal rights of others. When applied to the crime of murder, malice is the mental condition that motivates one individual to take the life of another individual without just cause or provocation. Now, if we turn to a sociological dictionary, it defines evil as a powerful force that some people believe to exist and which causes wicked and bad things to happen. Its synonyms are wickedness, bad, wrong, vice, etc. Evil is used to refer to all the wicked and bad things that happen in the world.
Oh, my camera
If you
skills
go to
are
religion,
terrible.
all the
I'm sorry,
different
y'all.
religions of the world have their own definitions of evil. Many of them are very similar.
And my
Some of
phone
them
on
are
the
slightly
charger, so
different.
it's like
But if we look at it like this,
leaning.
evil can be denoted as
I'm sorry.
profound immorality, but typically not without some basis in the understanding of the human condition, where strife and suffering, if you look at Hinduism, for example, are the true roots of evil. In certain religious contexts, evil has been described as a supernatural force. Now, definitions of evil vary, as does the analysis of its motives, and elements that are commonly associated with personal forms of evil involve unbalanced behavior, including anger, revenge, hatred, psychological trauma, expediency, ignorance, destruction, and neglect. In some forms of thought, evil is also sometimes perceived as the dualistic, antagonistic, binary opposite to good, in which good should prevail and evil should be defeated. The ethical questions regarding good and evil are subsumed into three major areas of study: meta-ethics, concerning the nature of good and evil; normative ethics, concerning how we ought to behave; and applied ethics, concerning particular moral issues. When the term is applied to events and conditions without agency, the forms of evil addressed presume more than one evildoer. Well, and that would hint at the word conspiracy. See chapter 2 for more on that. Now, if we look at the Greek historian, writer, and geographer Herodotus, he had an interesting statement about evil where he said, "The only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance."
I agree.
This implies that evil acts are committed
By
from a
ignorant
state
people.
of ignorance of the good. Could also go with Socrates, where he said, "To harm another is to harm oneself." And this indicates that only those who are self-harmed are truly capable of harming others. This concept will become more relevant later on. And then I'll wrap up this section with a few statements by the great Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who had some powerful statements on the nature of evil. And he should be one to know.
Thank you for the lights.
He
I
put it this way
appreciate
when
you
he
coming
said,
in.
"If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. In keeping silent about evil," he says, "in burying it so deep within us that no sign of it appears on the surface, we are implanting it, and it will rise up 1,000-fold in the future. When we neither punish nor reproach evildoers, we are not simply protecting their trivial old age, we are thereby ripping the foundations of justice from beneath new generations." And then he continues, "Many of you have already found out, and others will find out in the course of their lives, that truth eludes us if we do not concentrate our attention totally on its pursuit. But even while it eludes us, the illusion of knowing it still lingers and leads to many misunderstandings. Truth seldom is pleasant.
Right.
It is almost invariably bitter.
Indeed.
Keep that in mind. However, we know that no matter how bitter it might be, it is the truth that sets us free."
Indeed. Love, truth, freedom, justice.
Now, we could go on endlessly about all the different conceptions and misconceptions about what evil is and how it operates. I will leave you to study and think on this for yourself. That said, let's briefly explore the subject of human sacrifice
Oh no.
and see whether or not human evil really exists after all.
It exists in the hearts of men.
Carthaginians. Carthaginian society is paradoxical in that it was one of the wealthiest and most powerful civilizations in the ancient world, and yet it engaged in some rituals that even its barbaric contemporaries considered horrifying. This included infant sacrificial killings. Many experts believe that the offering of babies to gain favor of the gods helped the Carthaginians control their increasing population. They also believe that infant sacrifice was deliberately done by wealthy Carthaginian parents to keep their wealth intact. It's estimated that from 800 BC until 146 BC, when the Romans conquered Carthage, about 20,000 babies were sacrificed. However, not all experts believe that the Carthaginians did in fact engage in infant sacrifice. They contend that discovered infant remains had died of natural causes.
Damn line.
The Israelites. Many scholars firmly believe that the ancient Israelites performed a burnt offering of children in the name of an ancient Canaanite god named Moloch. Not all of ancient Israel practiced this ritual. Experts believe it was only practiced by an Israelite cult that had dedicated their lives to worshipping Moloch, and that the ritual had a Canaanite origin. Some scholars don't agree with this, contending that Moloch never existed in ancient Israelite society. For these scholars, the word Mok, from which the word Moloch was derived, doesn't mean god, but rather sacrifice. As such, sacrifices may have been made in a more general sense, or perhaps not at all. Scholars can't agree on the matter, and the debate continues.
Because they all lying.
Also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
Damn.
And so you were...
Right, I was born into a family that believes in this.
And does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right.
Of course.
There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really? And so who knows about it?
Everybody.
Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before.
And so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I blocked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought.
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to, you know.
Who's babies?
There were people who bred babies in their family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not. Or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back. The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean, it's not a very
difficult
thing.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies. But anyway, so you witnessed the sacrifice.
Right. When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
Damn. And she's just admitting that on TV and ain't nobody arresting her ass.
What are you sacrificing for?
Let that be somebody melanated. They'd have rushed her ass on the goddamn stage and drug her ass off to jail.
Were you raised with a sense of right and
I'm
wrong?
sorry, y'all. I'm just saying. This is the harsh
I
reality.
did both. I mean, to the outside world, everything we did was proper and right, and then there was
Oprah ass was doing this shit back then, y'all.
That things just got turned around.
Don't let her fool y'all.
What was wrong was right, and what was right was wrong.
Number 8. The Etruscans. The Etruscans were an ancient people who lived in what is now known as Tuscany. For many years, scholars were unwilling to accept the fact that the Etruscans did engage in the practice of human sacrifice, but when archaeologists at the University of Milan unearthed important evidence in Tarquinia, Italy, it was proven conclusively that the Etruscans did indeed practice human sacrificial killings. The archaeologists discovered several remains of sacrificed adults, infants, and children who were either foreign, ill, or of low social ranking. Number 7. The Chinese.
The Hans and
Sacrifice was very
Hams.
common in ancient China.
Try to change that
particularly
shit and
during
put it
the
on
Shang
us.
Dynasty,
Y'all the
the first
motherfuckers that
Chinese
pulled that
dynasty
damn roll
with
back
written
on Noah.
records. In fact, archaeological evidence suggests
Allegedly.
that human sacrifice was
In that
practiced on
story.
a grand scale during the Shang Dynasty. The purpose was twofold: political control and religious communication. Experts believe that there were 3 types of human sacrifice practiced by the Shang. In pit sacrifices, young men were sacrificed. Their bodies were dismembered, and they were buried without their personal possessions.
Oh, damn.
In foundation sacrifices, children and babies were used. Archaeological evidence shows that these human sacrifices experienced violent deaths, and they too were buried without possessions. Finally, in internment sacrifices,
Jesus.
young girls were sacrificed. Unlike the first 2, they were buried in the standard burial position, and their bodies were kept intact. Number 6. The Celts. The Celts practiced human sacrificial killings as part of their religious rituals, and there's extensive evidence to prove it. There are the written works of Roman and Greek historians, Irish texts written during medieval times, and recent archaeological evidence. Strabo, a Greek
But we was
geographer and
savages, they
philosopher,
said.
discussed the Celtic ritual of human sacrifice in his book, Geography. He said,
I don't see
"They,
no
the
carbonated.
Celts, would strike a man who had been consecrated for sacrifice
Melanated
with a sword,
individuals
and
on
they
that
obviously
list. I don't
based
see
on
not
these
one
skeletons, and they would not sacrifice
copper color
without the
motherfucker.
presence of the Druids.
Just saying.
Furthermore, he mentioned the Wicker Man and how the Celts
Them
used
is
it for
all
sacrifice. They would
people
construct a huge
that
field
lack
of straw
hue,
and wood,
for the
and
most
having
part.
thrown cattle and all manner of wild animals and humans into it, they would make a burnt offering of the whole thing. Many scholars doubt the veracity of Strabo's accounts, as well as other Greek and Roman historians, primarily because their works were filled with political propaganda. However, the discovery of a male body in Lindo Bog proved once and for all that the Celts did engage in human sacrifice to some degree. The Lindo man is said to have been strangled, hit on the head, and had his throat cut.
Damn.
Gorda then surrendered to the bog. Number
That's
5,
rough.
the Hawaiians. The
Uh-oh.
ancient Hawaiians believed that by sacrificing humans, they could gain
Goddamn.
the favor of Ku, the god of war
Dwayne
and
Johnson ass.
victory in their
The
battles.
Rock and
Sacrifices were held in temples called heiau.
that looked like his
People
ass
used were
too.
captives, particularly chiefs
Let me
from other
stop.
tribes, who would be hung upside down on wooden racks. The priest would be anointed with sweat collected from the sacrifice, then the sacrifice would be beaten repeatedly until their flesh became smooth. Finally, they would be eviscerated.
Oh my
The
god.
ritual didn't end there, though. Once disemboweled, the flesh would either be
Disemboweled.
cooked or eaten
That's-
raw by the
that's
priest and the
lovely.
chief of the tribe. Number 4. The Mesopotamians. The Mesopotamians practiced human sacrifice as part of the burial rituals of their royal and elite families. Palace attendants, warriors, and handmaidens were sacrificed for the purpose of accompanying their masters into the afterlife. For many years, experts believed that these sacrifices were killed with poison. However, new examinations showed that the deaths were much more brutal. They were
Damn.
stabbed through the head with a pike.
Damn, not a pike.
Number 3. The Aztecs. Aztec society would offer human lives in order to keep the sun from dying. The Aztecs strongly believed that human blood was a sacred life force and that the god of the sun, Huitzilopochtli, needed it for nourishment and appeasement. The Aztecs performed brutal and gruesome sacrificial killings of both volunteers and members of other tribes who were captured during war. Number 2. The Egyptians. Many Egyptologists believe that the ancient Egyptians practiced human sacrifice. Though there are some experts who disagree with this, sacrificial tombs found in Abydos prove that the ancient Egyptians did engage in at least some ritual retainer sacrifice, where the servants of pharaohs or other key figures would be killed so they could continue to serve in the afterlife. Number 1. The Incas. The Incas resorted to the human practice of sacrificing to the gods, particularly the offering of their children, as a way to prevent natural calamities. The Inca Empire was plagued by numerous natural disasters, including volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and floods. The Inca
Probably
believed
because they was
that
killing
these
their
natural
children.
catastrophes were controlled by the gods, and that favor needed to be gained through sacrifice. While many sacrifices were prisoners, some children were raised solely for the purpose of being ritually killed, under the belief that physically healthy children were the purest sacrifices the Inca could
Ignorance
offer.
is truly
The Inca
bliss.
family firmly believed that there was an afterlife where the children who were sacrificed would live in a better, happier place. In addition,
Who
the
told them
sacrifices
that?
were often treated very well before they were killed. They were given an excellent diet, a feast in their honor, and even a meeting with the emperor.
To die. That's great.
Now, these are just a few of the many examples of human sacrifice throughout history. And the question becomes, what was it that produced the sadism and the murderous, sadistic nature in human beings?
They start eating them.
Why are we so different from every other living creature?
That's
that
not.
lives
They
on this
eat.
planet?
They literally biting the
A few
people.
quotes jumped to
On
mind
the
that I
picture.
just want to run through with you for your consideration.
I see no
This one
melanated
comes
people
from
taking part in none of that
Nicholas
shit.
Tinbergen.
That's all
He
them
had an interesting
Lucifer
comment on
people.
humanity's sadistic nature. He put it like this. He said, on the one hand, man is akin to many species of animals.
Okay, and just a quick note on that man that was behind the camera. There's a theory that most Caucasian people are colorblind and they only see in shades of gray. With that being said, the theory is that the reason why initially television was in black and white is because there was a Caucasian person behind the camera lens. Therefore, the lens only can perpetuate what the eye watching is seeing. So, with that in mind, melanated people clearly are melanated with color so that they see more than just a black and white tone. So that was that.
In that he fights his own species. Man is the only species that is a mass murderer, the only misfit in his own society. And then we have one from Erich Fromm who said, man differs from the animal by the fact that he is a killer. He is the only primate that kills and tortures members of his own species without any reason, either biological or economic, and who feels satisfaction in doing so. It is this biologically non-adaptive and non-phylogenetically programmed malignant aggression that constitutes the real problem and the danger to man's existence as a species. Man's aggressive behavior, as manifested in war, crime, personal quarrels, and all kinds of destructive and sadistic behavior, is due to a phylogenetically programmed innate instinct which seeks for discharge and waits for the proper occasion to be expressed. And then we have a good one here from Leonard Shlain, where he was inquiring into the aggressive nature of human beings when he said, Eve's descendants have steadily accumulated the power to destroy each other in an unholy Armageddon, and like sleepwalkers, are shuffling towards a planetary ecological disaster. How could a slight, 5-foot-tall, 2-legged animal create such sublimity and yet wreak so much havoc in so minuscule an interval of Earth's history? Creation is a nightmare spectacular taking place on a planet that has been soaked for hundreds of millions of years in the blood of all its creatures. The soberest conclusion we can make is that the planet is being turned into a vast pit of fertilizer.
Or a hell pit. Maybe. Just
now,
saying.
what if all these rites, and
Tartarus
rituals, and sacrifices, and death cults are not just some distant memory from the ancient past?
And they are not.
What if the cults of human sacrifice
They are very
never
real.
really went away,
Not
but
at all.
simply updated, morphed, and adapted over time to
Indeed.
be less overt and more efficient? Are wars, for example, a form of human ritual and sacrifice? What about hospital deaths due to medical error? If the medical monopoly and the doctors that adhere to their edicts and Holy Writ continue to advise deadly treatments that kill vast numbers of people, are these patients not being sacrificed in some way?
Indeed
to the
they are.
cause of science?
That's with those concerts and other things.
If these drugs and experimental treatments kill more than they save, and this has been going on unabated for decades now with no end in sight, who's to say that these medics are not being used in a larger project of human experimentation, sacrifice, and ritual?
blood ain't the business, it's the plasma.
Welcome
They
to the
separate
wonderful
from the
world of
blood.
blood
That's the
donating.
piss, the urine,
Around the world,
the
giving blood
antidote.
is seen as a symbol of generosity, one of the noblest acts in modern society.
Bullshit.
But the reality is different altogether.
Healthcare is the perfect money-making industry. Our willingness to pay for available therapies, basically, especially for our loved ones, knows no bounds.
At the heart of this business, plasma. A
What did I
yellow
just
liquid
say?
rich in proteins. It's the main component
Urine.
of blood. It's more expensive than oil.
C'est l'exploitation de l'homme par l'homme. Le terme qui est utilisé par certains, c'est le nouveau cannibalisme. Est-ce qu'on accepte
Yo, plasma
dans le
TVs,
marchandage ce système qui
computer,
permet à un individu riche
all kind of stuff is made from plasma from people. And y'all wonder why this shit is so interactive and innovative. Because it got people parts in it.
We decided to explore a little-known area within the health industry, the blood trade.
Here
Our
we go.
investigation took us to France, Germany, and the U.S.
Oh, let me get these veggie sticks.
Yeah, man, you know why? They doing something they ain't doing right. They need to stop.
They doing something they ain't doing right. That's what the plan said.
Today,
They ain't
Carlos
doing
is
nothing
donating
right.
blood. Despite his busy job, he's a regular blood donor at the Red Cross Center in Lausanne. Carlos sees his act as a sign of
They milking his
commitment to the
ass.
community.
Like a dairy
More than
cow.
100 million donations are collected each year worldwide.
He got
In
somebody he is
2015,
donating to directly.
The Swiss Red Cross registered 311,000 donations.
Oh, God.
The
These
figure
people.
diminishes each year, and they're constantly seeking new donors.
Well, what you doing with the blood you already got? Hell, drinking
Blood
it?
saves lives.
Them niggas in the back with straws and shit. I'm sorry, y'all. I apologize. Forgive me for my outburst.
que je peux aider des malades.
Je trouve que c'est quand même quelque chose de beau de pouvoir donner quelque chose, en tout cas qui est une partie de soi-même.
Blood is a quite peculiar juice, said Faust.
Ain't no damn
stoutly.
juice. That is a
But he's
secretion.
not the only one to be interested. Health is also an industry, and blood donations are subject to the laws of the market.
Damn juice. Look at them programming your ass for food.
Voilà, ça c'est bien. C'est tout. Je vais chercher le jus de raisin.
Oui, volontiers.
Before giving blood, these Swiss donors must complete a medical questionnaire.
Why?
And give their informed consent. In particular, there is one line at the end of the form, a sentence in small letters. I am
That bit
aware
is
that some
tiny.
components of my donation may be used for the production of drugs. Only a few donors read this line.
Adrenochrome.
So it's crucial.
That is the main. That is.
Most of the donated blood is sold through private companies, something the Red Cross doesn't advertise.
Hell no, because they want you to keep bringing your shit in there. I'm sorry, I'm gonna be quiet. I promise I'm gonna try my best.
Blutspenden pro Jahr. Das sind Vollblutspenden, das heißt, in diesen Blutspenden sind natürlich alle Bestandteile drin, auch das Plasma.
Okay, und was machen Sie?
Plasma is urine. In case y'all did not
Bei
know.
anderen Blutbestandteilen ist es beim Plasma so.
Okay, so plasma, amniotic fluid, urine, the 70% of liquid that maintains your body during the day is all the same substance. They teach you that it is a different substance because they don't want you to know what they're using that substance for. Okay?
Etwa 20%.
They drinking it, just so y'all know. That's why Howard Hughes had to be done away with, because he had all that urine up in there, and he had enough to sustain himself for about 4 or 5 lives, okay? So just understand that we all have a fountain of youth, and I pray that they don't cut this part out, but that is the harsh reality of the situation. Your fountain of youth lies between your loins.
Und dieser Menge direkt in den Spitälern gebraucht werden. In den Spitälern gebraucht heißt für Patienten, die einen großen Blutverlust haben und dieses Volumen ersetzt halten müssen. Der restliche Anteil, das sind fast 80%, geht in die sogenannte Fraktionierindustrie. Das sind Firmen, die daraus stabile Blutprodukte und Medikamente herstellen.
The plasma fractionation industry These are the pharmaceutical companies that buy 80,000 liters of plasma from the Red Cross.
80,000? Who drinking
the
that?
The humanitarian institution makes nearly 10 million Swiss francs from this sale.
Now, goddamn it, where is that 20 million going? Why are we only getting $50? Well, not me. I can't donate, but that's not the point.
Bien, je dois dire
well, I don't donate. It's not that I can't. I refuse.
Je me renseigne pas énormément par rapport à ce genre de choses. Quand
if my blood was meant to be outside of my body, I would have a fountain
le fait que je vais donner de mon sang,
that I could cut on and off for this shit to come.
Venir, eh bien,
it's like if you was meant for surgery, you have a zipper. I'm gonna stop talking.
Qui sont pas très loin de chez nous. Donc c'est un peu l'image que j'ai moi du don du sang.
Ain't no buttons on zippers on niggas. I'm sorry.
First discovery: the majority of the donor's blood is sold to pharmaceutical industries. The industry is
so they can make the pills that they sell you and tell your ass it's medication when they really giving you somebody else's piss in them pills.
Interested in Carlos's blood for a specific reason. Its liquid part, called plasma,
that's piss. Look at
proteins.
They are y'all think I'm playing?
Very expensive and profitable
that
drugs.
is the cure and antidote to anything wrong with anybody on the planet. Why you think they always need a sample of that shit? They want the piss more than they want the blood.
Welcome to CSL Plasma. Typically,
I'm just saying, if y'all think about all the catheters that's in the hospital just right now, just one facility, one floor of senior citizens, you know what they doing with that? They about to tell you.
57% of our blood volume is made up of plasma.
That's piss!
Is a straw-colored liquid portion of the whole blood that transports water and nutrients to all cells of the body.
Okay, what is that? 90% water. Okay, so 70% of that water that's not white and red blood cells is urine. Your amniotic fluid that women have that the babies are carried in. Why you think when your water break you smell like urine? Because it's urine. Okay, let's just understand. They use these terminologies to confuse you. But the reality is, urine has always been used for medicinal purposes. You get a pink eye, the baby get thrash, rashes, all kind of different internal situations urine has been used to cure in the past. However, for some reason, they don't want you to know that. I'm going to stop talking.
It is composed of approximately 90% water and 10% protein. Plasma.
The plasma industry is huge, and a handful of companies share the world market. Baxter in the USA, CSL Behring in Australia, Grifols in Spain, and the company Octapharma in Switzerland, which we discover through these promotional films.
Octapharma's raw material is produced by the perfect bioreactor, developed over millions of years of evolution.
They're a damn lie.
These companies, plasma is nothing but a raw material, and very lucrative too. The professional term is fractionation, the name of the procedure that transforms donors' plasma into drugs. To do this, they collect, freeze, and mix thousands of liters of human plasma.
Piss!
These companies
and they make a pill and mix it with that damn petroleum and serve your ass with it. I'm just saying. Come on, Judy Markovitz. Let their ass know.
MMR vaccines recognized since 1994. So, reverse transcriptase is an enzyme.
The only reason why she telling us because she didn't get credit for the shit. She mad. She bitter. They tried to get her ass for 11 years.
Reverse transcribes, writes backwards, are the genome, which is RNA, into DNA. And then it inserts itself into your DNA and stays there for your lifetime and for generations after that. So reverse transcriptase is a hallmark of the presence of a retrovirus. So in 1994, our government, the UK government, the WHO, the World Health Organization,
that means Fauci,
accepted and talked about and discussed in institution of medicine meetings the presence of reverse transcriptase in the MMR vaccine and whether or not it posed a threat. Well, fast forward to 2011, our work and the ramifications of our work said absolutely it makes a difference. And absolutely it makes a difference. Absolutely it's there. And oh my God, it was the big oh my God moment in our book, In Plague, where we presented these data. And they basically said, we can't stop this. They're everywhere. They're in our lab workers. They're in our doctors. They're in our nurses. We introduced unwittingly and unknowingly into the human population a new family of retroviruses that has long been associated with cancers, leukemia, lymphoma, neuroimmune disease, including Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and such. And so we're looking at the very explosion of these diseases in our world today. And when the government
and these are the people y'all go to for help.
It was, will we tell the truth? Will we say we introduced it by a contaminated blood supply or contaminated vaccine? No, we won't. We'll just make sure Judy Mikovits and Frank Rossetti go away forever and that nobody ever believes a word they said and that this work is all fraud. But the one little problem they had was I wouldn't sign that piece of paper. I wouldn't agree. I wouldn't say it. The data support it. We'll continue talking about the data and neither would Dr. Rossetti. They tried to basically get us to refute our data, deny our data, throw away or destroy our original data showing the infected families and populations, and we refused. And when we refused, we were fired.
Then they tried to kill their ass.
For me at least, this is why it is important to understand the track record of human evil, of cults, of human sacrifice and experimentation, etc., and not just the official and accepted events of history that have mostly just been airbrushed and highly manipulated. But it is important to consider also the largely unknown and occult events of history. Could the same sort of beliefs that formed the various priesthoods and sacrificial cults from the ancient world still be alive and well in our modern times?
Yep.
The first example is not directly related to human trafficking, but in my view, they remain relevant in how they point to patterns among the elite class. But do the apparent patterns
Thank you for liking. I appreciate it.
ultimately have a benign explanation? Are these images showing a genuine motif of Masonic influence?
Well, they ain't got the big guy.
Of communication, waiting for us to take notice.
They ain't waiting, they showing your ass some shit.
Are we applying meaning to something that doesn't exist? The fact that I can't say for sure is perhaps the most...
That's the Proboscis Club.
Is the future.
Beware, the lizards are here.
This is the future.
For who?
Revolution.
There ain't no damn innovation for me. Okay, so I'ma just come right back with the next one because it got me intrigued. Thank you for choosing to spend your time here. I I hope it is informative. I hope that the information that you gather here can be beneficial to your lives, your families, your communities, just your overall being as a whole. But in order to truly uplift humanity, we must first embrace nature.
Has the practice of sacrificing the Virgin really gone away?
Hell no.
Have
I'm
the
sorry.
blood-soaked gods and deities of the ancient world really disappeared?
Pick it
Given
more
what we've
discreetly.
already uncovered, and trust me, what I presented in these few chapters is only scratching the surface.
Like
would it really surprise you if this
$10,000
notion
cabinets and
of
shit.
a more modernized, updated, and much more subtle form of ritual and sacrifice be happening in our world today? And would that really be so far-fetched after all? Now let's take a brief glimpse into the dark history of human experimentation. Who were and who are the experimenters? They will often give the excuse that these horrific, brutal, and inhumane experiments were all done in the name of science and progress. Well, what then does that have to say about the perversion of science? Has science become something of a cult?
Indeed.
It has been said that history is the repository of knowledge, a warning for future generations, so that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. It is my opinion that the history of inquisitions and witch hunts is very relevant to what we see happening in our world today. This very brief overview will be condensed, but this general outline will be helpful moving forward. The questions I have are: who commanded and organized the infamous witch trials? I would advise you to start by following the symbolism to learn more. Did these people really deserve their extreme punishments? Who carried out these barbaric executions and tortures? If there were those who would justify such atrocities then, under the guise of some religious ideal or progress, via purging out all undesirables or nonconformists, could similar events like these unfold again? Could they happen again in our time? The start of the medieval Inquisition is generally dated to 1231, when Pope Gregory IX announced his papal bull Excommunicamus. The Excommunicamus established inquisitional courts answerable directly to the Pope. These higher courts bypassed the courts created by local bishops, as had been church practice until the 13th century. Inquisitional courts were comprised of specifically appointed, permanent ecclesiastical judges who carried with them the authority of the Catholic Church wherever they sat.
Meaning that they torture you
The two
until
inquisitors,
you
with
convict
equal
yourself.
authority bestowed directly by the Pope, were in charge of each tribunal, aided by assistants, notaries, police, and counselors. When medieval people used the word Inquisition, they were referring to a judicial technique, not an actual organization. There was, in fact, no such thing as the Inquisition, in the sense of an impersonal organization.
The line of questioning used to get you to
there
confess.
were inquisitors of heretical depravity, individuals assigned by the Pope to inquire into heresy in specific areas. They were called such because they applied a judicial technique known as inquisitio, which could be translated as inquiry or inquest. In 1252, Pope Innocent IV had decreed that the inquisitors operated above civil law and gave official sanction to the direct use of torture by church officials.
Another decree demanded that all civil rulers and all commoners must assist the work of the Inquisition or face excommunication. Makes me think of the snitch lines of the Stasi police in East Berlin, or the Khmer Rouge. The most famous period of inquisitional activity began in 1478 with the initiation of the Spanish Inquisition. It is very important to understand that nothing really all that new was employed here. What was new, however, was the scale of the mayhem and the political aspects of the situation. By means of clever political intrigue, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain managed to get political control over the machinery of terror. Only the Inquisitor General was appointed by Rome. The motive behind the Spanish Inquisition was the consolidation of political power by Ferdinand and Isabella. For centuries, Spain had been the home to numerous disparate religions and traditions, including Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. The use of religious persecution was therefore a political tool for uniting Spain under the monarchy. The Christian campaign against paganism also manifested itself in the hunt for witches. Again, this was not new. However, Pope Gregory IX, the intellectual mastermind of the formal Inquisition, also can be given credit for setting in motion the organized system of witch hunting as official church policy. The persecution of witches took place in both Catholic and Protestant countries. However, witch hunting was particularly common in the Protestant Northern Europe. In Christian societies, no alternative religious traditions, especially paganism, would be tolerated. So the first mass trials of witches occurred in the 15th century. The number of these trials then rose considerably in the mid-16th century with the onset of the Reformation. The period between 1550 and 1650 has been referred to as the Burning Times, in reference to the frequent burning of people accused of being witches. Witch hunting became particularly widespread in Central Europe during the 30 Years' War. The latest scholarly estimates suggest that in the period between 1450 and 1750, as many as 50,000 trials and executions of witches may have taken place, with roughly 75% of these being against women, 25% against men. The Malleus Maleficarum, Latin for the Hammer of the Witches, is one of the most famous medieval treatises on witches. It was written in 1486 by Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, and was first published in Germany in 1487. Its main purpose was to challenge all arguments against the existence of witchcraft and to instruct magistrates on how to identify, interrogate, and convict witches. During the 9th through 13th centuries, the Church had established and enforced penalties for witchcraft, or what they deemed witchcraft, that is. Originally, these were based on the Church's assertion that witchcraft was a superstition. Thus, belief in witchcraft was not in accord with the Church's ideology. So this associated witchcraft with heresy. If you look back at the Roman Inquisition, it was established in the 13th century to find and punish heretics who were seen as undermining the Church's official theology and therefore a threat to the very foundations of the Church. At about that same time, secular law became involved in prosecutions for witchcraft. The Inquisition helped to codify both church and secular laws on the subject and began to determine which authority, secular or church, had responsibility for which offenses. Prosecutions for witchcraft, or maleficarum, were prosecuted primarily under secular laws in Germany and France in the 13th century and in Italy in the 14th. This is one of the elements that actually led to our modern legal concept of the separation between church and state. The Malleus Maleficarum codified the folklore and beliefs of the Alpine peasants and was dedicated to the implementation of Exodus 22:18, where it said, "You shall not permit a sorceress to live." The work is divided into 3 parts. In part 1, the reality and the depravity of witches is emphasized, and any disbelief in demonology is condemned as heresy. Because of the nature of the enemy, any witness, no matter what his credentials, may testify against an accused. Part 2 is a compendium of fabulous stories about the alleged activities of witches, such as diabolical compacts, sexual relations with devils, incubi and succubi, etc., night riding, and metamorphosis. Part 3 is a discussion of the legal procedures to be followed in witch trials. Torture is sanctioned as a means of securing confessions. Lay and secular authorities are called upon to assist the inquisitors in the task of exterminating heretics. So in this short little description of this very dark chapter of human history, I hope you can see some of the alarm bells that I'm bringing up about the idea of having a central authority that has the ability to rewrite laws, to decide who in their society are somehow evil or heretical.
Imagine a world where everything you do, from meeting your friends to using a public toilet, is recorded. Based on your actions, ranging from what you buy to where you go, you are given a score similar to the way you rate an Uber drive. If the government believes what you do is socially beneficial, the score will increase, and if not, the score will decrease. If you critique the government, buy alcohol or play games, your score decreases, and when your score is low, you won't be allowed to travel, your children would be barred from applying to high school, you would be fired from your job, and the best part, you would be publicly shamed. This dystopian future is a reality of today's China. According to People's Daily, China's facial recognition system has become so advanced that it can scan the faces of 1.4 billion Chinese citizens in just a second. After the arrival of the internet in China in 1994, it became a very critical channel of communication for Chinese citizens. In a place where speech and access to information were heavily restricted, the internet became a medium where people could find uncensored news, speak their minds, and even organize protests. However, as time passed, the authorities found a way to block the free flow of information and use the internet for their benefit. Within a decade, they built an extensive infrastructure of surveillance combined with cutting-edge technologies. With the help of it, they tracked those who spoke against the government, and they were subsequently arrested or intimidated. Things worsened under Xi's era, when a ruling was made by Supreme People's Court in September 2013. According to it, a person could face a prison for 3 years for posting comments that spread rumors and are deemed to be defamatory by the authorities. Soon, the state media revealed that the government had hired more than 2 million individuals as microblog monitors to report on online postings to official censors. In 2016, a cybersecurity law was passed which further facilitated state control on the internet. Companies like Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu were required to censor prohibited content to reduce the anonymity of people on the internet. They were instructed to ask people their real name with proof during registration. During the same period, the Chinese government was also working on Project Skynet. Skynet is a mass surveillance system that was created in 2005. However, the government revealed its existence in 2013, when it had already installed a network of 20 million cameras across the country. By 2019, this number increased from 20 million to 200 million. Authorities claim that this network allows them to track criminals within minutes and keep the public safe. But the question is, who will save the public from the government?
Is this ringing any bells?
One of the darkest parts of the Holocaust was the experiments that camp doctors would perform on many different Jews and prisoners inside the concentration camps. The name that is infamously linked to these experiments is the Angel of Death, Josef Mengele. During his time as a doctor in Auschwitz, he would liquidate and murder innocent prisoners for nothing but his sadistic trials, and would take a particular interest in identical twins. Along with this, he would also select thousands of prisoners to go to their deaths within the gas chambers. However, after the war, he would never be captured and would never face justice. At the trials of the perpetrators of the Holocaust, evidence would be put forward about Dr. Mengele and how horrific his experiments were, and inflicted so much suffering. But he would never be brought to justice. Josef Mengele would join the Nazi Party in 1937 and the SS a year later. He would volunteer for medical service within the Waffen-SS and would rise through the ranks. In 1942, Auschwitz, which had intended to serve as a labour camp, began to prepare for the final solution and was beginning to become used as an extermination camp.
Es ist der finsterste Ort der Menschheit. In Auschwitz töteten die Nationalsozialisten im Zweiten Weltkrieg über 1 Million Menschen. Und er trieb im KZ sein Unwesen als Lagerarzt. Josef Mengele, der sich 1940 freiwillig zur Waffen-SS gemeldet hatte. 1943 kam er nach Auschwitz-Birkenau, führte Selektionen durch, entschied, wer Zwangsarbeit verrichten und wer sofort sterben musste. An den Lagerinsassen führte der Anthropologe grausame Experimente durch. Berüchtigt sind seine Versuche mit Zwillingen. Eva Moses Korr und ihre Zwillingsschwester überlebten die Gräuelexperimente.
That is what I believe, that he was a monster. Yes, he was, but he didn't think so. He thought he was doing it for the sake of science.
Nach dem Krieg setzte sich Mengele 1949 nach Argentinien ab, wie andere NS-Kriegsverbrecher ebenfalls. In Genua kam er zum ersten Mal in Kontakt mit Schweizer Behörden. Auf dem Konsulat erhielt er einen Reisepass des Internationalen Komitees vom Roten Kreuz, nachdem er sich eine neue Identität verschafft hatte.
The 10 darkest Soviet Union secrets. Number 5. Human experiments. During the Cold War, Soviet secret services established laboratories for human experimentation on Gulag prisoners. The aim was to find a tasteless, odorless, deadly poison that couldn't be detected in post-mortem. Research was conducted by disguising potential poisons in the medication or food and drink of the prisoners. According to historian Dr. Vadim J. Verstein, a poison named C2 was successfully created, killing any victim within 15 minutes. The laboratories were kept a secret to hide plans to poison prominent figures of enemy countries. It wasn't until the dissolution of the Soviet Union that the disturbing experiments were revealed.
This is where, in December 1949, 12 members of Japan's Kwantung Army stood trial. That was the only time war criminals have ever been tried for creating a biological weapon and testing it on people.
That's your chemotherapy now.
The remorse shown by one member of Japan's top-secret Unit 731. He and his colleagues killed thousands of victims while developing biological weapons.
He's the guy who had been a Unit 731 soldier when he was a young man and killed people.
Paul Johnson, an American director, has studied Unit 731 documents at length and knows its history well.
Unit 731 was a unique organization in the history of the world. What they were trying to do was to simply do nothing short than build the most powerful and most deadly biological weapons program that the world had ever known.
If you go to Google and type in the word experiment, one of the first things you'll see is the Stanford Prison Experiment. It's probably the best-known psychological study of all time. It all began in West Coast America on a summer's day back in 1971, when college students grew their hair long, protested against their government,
were
Started
pro-peace,
taking acid
total
at the
anti-authority.
university and LSD.
Or so we thought, until Philip Zimbardo.
So the Stanford Prison Study very simply is an attempt to see what happens when you put really good people in a bad place. We put an ad in the city newspaper, wanted students for study of prison life, lasting up to 2 weeks. We're going to pay you $15 a day. This is back in 1971. It's pretty good money. And we picked 75 volunteers, gave them a battery of psychological tests, and we picked 24 who on all dimensions were normal and healthy to begin with. And then we did what is critical for all research. We randomly assigned half of them to the role of playing guards or the role of playing prisoners. It's literally like flipping a coin. And then what we did is we told the guards, come down a day early, and we had them pick their own uniform. We had them help set up the prison so they'd feel like it was their prison, and the prisoners were coming into their place. The guards would strip them naked, delouse them, pretending that they were lice. It's kind of a degradation ritual. Put them in solitary confinement, which is a tiny little hole in a closet, about this big, dark, and they said at this point, everything but breathing air is a privilege. Food is a privilege, clothes are a privilege, having a bed is a privilege. And so the guards began to say, here are the new rules. And the new rules are, you are dangerous. And so the guards began to say, here are the new rules. And the new rules are, you are dangerous, and we are going to treat you as such. And then it began to escalate. Each day, the level of abuse, aggression, violence against prisoners got more and more extreme. And so the guards changed to become more dominant. And you see, it's all about power.
Continue. The experiment requires that you continue. 330 volts.
The experiments that Milgram and others conducted were controversial, and for ethical reasons may never be conducted again. Yet the results of those experiments remain groundbreaking and increasingly relevant to contemporary life. In 1962, Stanley Milgram shocked the world with his study on obedience. To test his theories, he invented an electronic box that would become a window into human cruelty. In ascending order, a row of buttons marked the amount of voltage one person would inflict upon another.
The most chilling experiments we have uncovered took place at this Gothic estate called Ravenscrag, halfway up Mount Royal in Montreal. It houses the Allen Memorial Institute of Psychiatry of McGill University. It was here that the CIA funded a series of experiments, severe experiments. The work was done by the Institute's then director, Dr. Ewan Cameron. It is the closest experimentation to brainwashing yet disclosed. His work, unprecedented in psychiatry, consisted of 3 areas which he called sleep therapy, psychic driving, and the ultimate depatterning. Dr. Maurice Dongier, current head of the Allen Memorial Institute.
In his psychic driving, so-called type of therapy, he would give the patient intensive electric treatment in order to make the patient regress deeply, become forgetful, and then he would attempt to implant new ideas in the mind of the patient.
Now, to a layman, it would appear that Dr. Cameron was trying to take the slate and wipe it clean, the slate being the mind. In other words, brainwashing.
Exactly, that's a very good comparison.
Brainwashing.
Yes.
There are many kinds of sacrifice. I've gone through with you a brief history of sacrifice in a physical, literal sense, of sacrificing people to actual gods, deities,
or priest classes. But there's also another kind of sacrifice that happens that is regarded as the war between the one versus the many, otherwise known as the individual versus the collective or the group. The main question at hand here is, does the individual in society have the right to his or her own freedom or not? Are you an individual, self, that has your own mind, your own feelings, your own aspirations, your own goals, and your own autonomy? Or are you a sacrificial animal on the altar of the crowd? To illustrate this a little bit further, I'll read through a few brief quotes that have always had a very profound impact on me personally. We should first quickly define the term collectivism so that we understand what we're talking about. What we're not talking about is someone who is a hermit living in some cabin in the woods who has zero contact with society, with his community, or with his family. That is not what we are discussing here when we talk about the individual. What we're talking about is your freedom and your right to live a life freely, unmolested by government, by a minority, or a majority, or anyone. So let's define the term collectivism. Collectivism holds that the individual, you or I, have no real rights, and that your life and work belong to the group, and that the group may sacrifice you at its own whim to its own interests. And the only way, of course, to implement such a doctrine is by means of brute force and coercion. Ayn Rand puts it this way when she says, it stands to reason that where there's sacrifice, there's somewhat coercion. Ayn Rand puts it this way when she says, it stands to reason that where there's sacrifice, there's someone collecting sacrificial